Imagine a mind so alive with ideas that even a knock at the door can shatter a thought that might have changed everything. This is why some of the brightest people you know keep their doors and their lives guarded from casual visits. In the end, the choice to limit visitors is not about shutting people out, but about letting the right moments in, preserving the silence where ideas are born, so that when the door does open, it opens to something meaningful. The mind of an intelligent person often resembles a vast and intricate sanctuary, a place where the noise of the outer world is quieted so that the subtle voices of thought can be heard. Within this sanctuary are corridors lined with shelves of memory, symbols, questions, and half-formed insights. Each of these mental rooms contains treasures that have been gathered over a lifetime, ideas shaped by study, reflection, and experience. This inner world is not simply a collection of knowledge, it is a living ecosystem where thoughts interact, evolve, and mature over time. Just as one might protect a sacred temple from careless footsteps, so too does such a person guard this inner space from unnecessary intrusion. The mind is not merely a tool for processing the events of daily life for these individuals. It is a realm of exploration and discovery, a place where they commune with ideas as others might commune with close friends or spiritual truths. In this inner sanctuary, silence is not emptiness but a kind of fertile soil from which new thoughts emerge. Solitude becomes a vessel for focus, allowing attention to settle on matters of importance without being scattered by interruptions. It is in these moments of undisturbed contemplation that they find their greatest clarity, piecing together connections that might otherwise be lost in the rush of constant engagement with the outside world. To an observer, such periods of quiet might appear idle or unproductive. Yet beneath the stillness lies an active mind working through complex patterns, refining understandings, and shaping visions that may one day manifest in the tangible world. Protecting this space is not an act of selfishness but one of necessity. Just as a craftsman cannot work while strangers rearrange the tools on his bench, an intelligent person cannot think with depth when the sanctity of their mental workshop is disrupted. Visitors, particularly unexpected ones, can feel like a sudden storm entering a calm garden. The balance, so carefully maintained, is unsettled, and it takes time and energy to restore the mental order. Even when the visitor's intentions are kind, the intrusion demands a shift in focus, from inner work to outer performance, from contemplation to conversation. This transition is not effortless. It is a withdrawal from one world and an abrupt immersion into another, each requiring a different kind of energy. In their sanctuary, intelligent people are free to explore ideas without judgment or distraction. They can entertain contradictions, follow a thought into unfamiliar territory, or simply let their mind wander without concern for how it might be perceived. The inner life here is intimate, a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, between reason and imagination. The arrival of visitors can feel like someone walking into this private conversation uninvited, not out of malice, but because they do not see the invisible boundaries that have been crossed. These boundaries are not physical walls, they are subtle lines of respect for the mental and emotional processes unfolding within. The preservation of this sanctuary allows them to return to their thoughts as one might return to a half-finished painting or a delicate experiment in progress. Every interruption risks breaking the thread, losing a connection, or erasing the clarity of a moment that may never come again. The outer world, with its constant demands and noise, will always press for attention, but those who understand the value of their inner life choose to shield it whenever possible. In doing so, they ensure that the sanctuary remains a place of renewal, where thought can deepen, creativity can flourish, and the self can remain in harmony with the vast and often unspoken realities that dwell within. When a person of deep thought is engaged in their inner work, their mind operates like a finely tuned instrument, sensitive to even the slightest disturbance. This mental state is often the product of hours, sometimes days, of quiet immersion in reflection, analysis, or creative synthesis. The mind in such moments is not passive, but actively weaving together strands of memory, observation, and imagination into patterns that might hold meaning or reveal truth. An unexpected visitor is like a sudden hand striking the strings of this instrument without warning, producing a jarring sound that breaks the harmony. It is not the presence of the person itself that is most disruptive, but the abrupt shift in mental focus and the severing of a thread of thought that may have taken a long time to find. Once broken, these threads are not easily restored, for the mind cannot simply pick up exactly where it left off. The context, the emotional tone, and the momentum of the idea may have already faded. This interruption is not the same as a mere pause. A pause can be intentional and controlled, a moment chosen to rest the mind before returning to the work. An interruption, however, forces an involuntary detour into the external world. The flow of thought is delicate, much like a dream that dissolves the moment one tries to explain it aloud. When the knock on the door or the ring of a bell pulls someone out of their mental space, they are required to reorient themselves entirely, to shift from internal dialogue to external interaction. This is not simply a change in activity, but a change in the very mode of being, requiring a different pace, tone, and even posture of the mind. Those who spend much of their time in deep reflection understand that thought does not always arrive in a steady, controllable stream. It often comes in waves, and these waves can be rare and unpredictable. When one is caught in such a wave, a moment of clarity or inspiration, any disturbance can cause it to break prematurely. The cost is not just the loss of the specific thought in progress, but the disruption of the mental state itself. It may take hours to return to the depth from which the insight emerged, and sometimes it never returns at all. The mind is like a lens brought into perfect focus. A sudden shift can blur the image so completely that the subject is lost. Visitors, even well-meaning ones, usually arrive carrying their own energy, moods, and needs. This energy inevitably demands attention and response. The intelligent person, who may have been absorbed in abstract concepts or the careful unraveling of a problem, must now engage with the practicalities of hospitality, greeting, conversing, perhaps offering refreshment. What was once a mind fully turned inward is now a mind pulled outward, divided between the remnants of its inner work and the requirements of the immediate social situation. Even after the visitor departs, the mind does not instantly fall back into its former rhythm. It must wander, recalibrate, and slowly descend again into the deeper waters where it had been before. The disruption is not a matter of personal offense toward the visitor, but a matter of protecting a fragile process. Deep thought thrives on continuity, on an unbroken chain of connections between one idea and the next. Once that chain is broken, rebuilding it is not simply a matter of remembering where one left off. It is about regaining the mental and emotional atmosphere that allowed those connections to form in the first place. Without this atmosphere, even if the original thought is remembered, it may no longer carry the same weight, clarity, or insight it once did. And so the work remains diminished in a way that cannot be fully repaired. For those who live in the realm of deep thinking, conversation is not simply an exchange of words, but a meeting of minds, a bridge between inner worlds. They do not measure the value of communication by the number of sentences spoken, but by the depth of meaning carried within them. To such individuals, shallow exchanges, the polite small talk that greases the wheels of casual social life, can feel hollow and draining. It is not that they cannot engage in it when necessary, but that it rarely nourishes them in the way a genuine dialogue does. They long for conversations that explore ideas, confront truths, and venture into the territories of thought and feeling that most people hesitate to enter. Without this depth, the interaction feels like sipping water from an empty cup, a form without substance. Their reluctance to receive visitors often comes from an awareness of how much of everyday social interaction is bound by convention rather than authenticity. A visitor may arrive with good intentions, but social customs tend to direct the encounter toward pleasantries, updates, and predictable exchanges that skim the surface of human experience. For the thinker, these moments can feel like walking in circles around a vast garden without ever stepping inside. They sense that there is more beneath the surface, but the rules of social politeness discourage going there uninvited. To remain at the surface is to remain in a place where nothing truly changes, where no new insight is born and no real connection is forged. Meaningful conversation requires time, trust, and the willingness of both parties to lower their defenses and speak from a place of sincerity. Such conditions rarely appear in casual visits, especially when they are unexpected. In the absence of these conditions, the intelligent person may feel as though they are performing a role rather than engaging as their authentic self. They nod, smile, and respond appropriately, all the while aware that the exchange could be so much more if the boundaries of small talk could be set aside. This awareness can make the experience feel unsatisfying, even when it is pleasant on the surface. Furthermore, deep thinkers often carry with them questions or ideas that occupy their attention for long stretches of time. When they do engage in conversation, they prefer to bring these questions to the table, to see them reflected in another mind, and perhaps to discover something they could not have found alone. But this kind of exchange requires the other person to meet them halfway, to be willing to think aloud, to explore, and to risk moments of silence as thoughts take shape. in most social visits. The pace is too quick, the rhythm too light for this deeper work to happen. Words are traded rapidly, not to uncover truth, but to keep the air filled. It is also worth noting that for those who live much of their life in introspection, words are not merely tools but vessels for meaning. Each word carries a weight, and to spend them on matters of little consequence can feel like scattering seeds on barren soil. They do not wish to hoard their thoughts, but they wish to plant them in conversations where they might take root. Visitors who come without a shared intention for depth rarely provide this fertile ground, and so the thinker feels a quiet resistance to opening the door too often. This preference for depth is not a rejection of people, but a commitment to authenticity. The intelligent person knows that genuine human connection is one of life's rarest treasures, but it cannot be manufactured on demand. It must arise naturally in the right conditions between people who are willing to see beyond appearances and speak from the heart of their being. Without that, the meeting remains a polite exchange between two masks, leaving the deeper selves untouched. For a mind that values depth and clarity, the act of receiving visitors is not merely a matter of opening a door, but of opening one's mental and emotional space. This requires preparation, for stepping from solitude into social engagement is not an effortless leap. In solitude, the inner world is quiet, thoughts are arranged in a natural order, and emotions flow in a steady rhythm. When a visitor arrives without warning, this order is disrupted, and the mind is forced to shift rapidly from an inward, focused state to one that must attend to another person's presence. Such a transition can feel abrupt and disorienting, like being pulled from a warm bed into cold air without time to adjust. The person is suddenly expected to offer attention, warmth, and responsiveness, even if their inner state was one of introspection or focused work only moments before. Preparation matters because it allows one to set aside the work of the inner world temporarily, creating space for the outer interaction without feeling that something important has been lost. When a visit is expected, the mind can complete its immediate thoughts, save its place in its quiet inner conversation, and make peace with pausing. This readiness transforms the experience from an intrusion into a choice, from a disruption into a welcome. The intelligent person understands that meaningful interaction requires presence. Presence cannot be summoned instantly. It needs a mental shift, a gathering of self, and sometimes even a small ritual of transition, such as tidying the room, making tea, or simply taking a deep breath to close one chapter before opening another. When no preparation is possible, the visitor's arrival demands an immediate reallocation of energy. Whatever thoughts or tasks were in progress must be abandoned midstream, often with the lingering sense that they may not be recovered in the same form. The mind, caught halfway between worlds, may struggle to give the visitor its full attention, leading to a feeling of strain. The host is present in body, but still partially tethered to the unfinished work left behind. This divided state is unsatisfying for both sides. The guest may sense a subtle distraction, and the host feels unable to be fully themselves. Preparation is also about emotional readiness. Those who think deeply often carry layers of reflection that shape their mood and energy. They may be wrestling with a complex idea, processing an experience, or simply inhabiting a quiet emotional space. Moving from this inward state into outward sociability requires a shift in tone and tempo, one that cannot be done authentically in haste. Without time to adjust, the host may feel they are putting on a mask, speaking from a surface version of themselves rather than from a genuine, grounded place. For someone who values authenticity, this can feel hollow and unsatisfying, even when the conversation itself is pleasant. This is why invitations and planned visits are often embraced more readily than surprise arrivals. When the timing is known, the mind can make the necessary adjustments in advance, ensuring that the meeting is not only physically possible, but mentally and emotionally available. In such cases, the interaction can be richer, more present, and more rewarding for both people. The host can greet the visitor with genuine openness, knowing that nothing vital within them has been left unresolved or abandoned. Without this preparation, even the most well-intentioned visit can feel like a small theft of the mind's momentum. A displacement that leaves both the inner and outer worlds slightly out of balance. Solitude for a thinking mind is not mere isolation, but a necessary environment where ideas can be born and nurtured without interference. Just as a painter needs a blank canvas to begin their work, the intelligent person requires an uncluttered mental space in which thoughts can take shape. This space is not only physical but psychological, a stillness that allows connections to form organically between seemingly unrelated impressions, memories, and concepts. It is in these moments of undisturbed quiet that creativity flourishes, because there is room for ideas to stretch, evolve, and refine themselves without the pressure to be immediately understood or explained to others. Visitors, even with the best intentions, inevitably bring their own perspectives, moods, and energies, and these can color or redirect the internal process in ways that may dilute the purity of the original vision. The act of creation, whether intellectual or artistic, often begins in a fragile state. Ideas in their early stages are like seeds barely sprouting, vulnerable to being trampled by too much exposure to outside influence. A casual comment, a skeptical glance, or even a subtle shift in conversation can alter the course of an idea before it has had a chance to fully form. The intelligent person is aware of this vulnerability and protects it by maintaining boundaries around their solitude. This is not an act of selfishness, but of stewardship, a recognition that the mind's inner work is as delicate as any creative craft. Without protection, the initial spark of inspiration can be extinguished before it has the strength to withstand outside opinion. Visitors may not consciously intend to interfere, but their presence introduces an unspoken pressure to shift attention outward. The focus that was once wholly devoted to exploring a thought now becomes divided between hosting duties and social engagement. The energy required for meaningful creation is redirected into maintaining conversation, offering hospitality, and adjusting to the visitor's emotional and mental state. While these are natural and often enjoyable human exchanges, they are also incompatible with the deep concentration required to bring complex ideas to life. The mind, once fully immersed in its own current, is forced to swim against the new flow introduced by another person's presence. Solitude also serves as a protective boundary for the unconscious processes that feed creativity. Much of the most significant mental work happens beneath the surface, outside the realm of deliberate conscious effort. In quiet moments, the mind is able to sift through experiences, connect disparate images, and generate insights that rise unexpectedly into awareness. This background work is easily disrupted by external stimuli, which pull attention toward the immediate and concrete rather than the subtle, and emerging a visitor's voice, movement, or even silent presence changes the mental landscape, creating ripples in the still water where insights are forming. By guarding their solitude, intelligent individuals give themselves the freedom to explore ideas to their limits without compromise. They can entertain possibilities that might seem strange or impractical to others, follow a line of thought through its twists and dead ends, and return to it as often as needed until it reveals something worth bringing into the outer world. This uninterrupted process is essential for work that aims to be original rather than reactive. It is not about rejecting others, but about ensuring that the creative work has a chance to exist in its truest form before it is exposed to external influence. The blank canvas must remain untouched until the artist is ready to paint, and the thinker's inner space must remain undisturbed until the thought has matured enough to be shared. Welcoming company is not a simple matter of opening one's door, but of opening one's attention and energy to another person. And for those who value depth, this is not done indiscriminately. They understand that time and presence are finite resources, and that genuine human connection requires both to be given fully. This is why they are selective about socializing, choosing to engage with others when there is a true meeting of minds or hearts, rather than simply filling time with idle interaction. Such selectivity is not rooted in arrogance or coldness, but in a recognition of the kind of exchanges that truly enrich them. When they invite someone into their space, it is because they sense that the encounter will bring meaning, understanding, or mutual inspiration, rather than drain their energy through obligatory conversation or superficial pleasantries. Selective socializing also preserves the integrity of the relationships they do have. By limiting the frequency of visits, they allow each meeting to carry more weight and intentionality. The moments shared are not blurred together by overexposure, but stand out as distinct and memorable. When time together is rare and deliberate, both people are more likely to be fully present, to listen deeply, and to value the exchange for what it is. This creates a dynamic in which conversation can grow organically into more profound territory, unhurried and unforced, rather than remaining trapped in the patterns of polite but empty interaction that so often dominate casual visits. The intelligent person often sees that social contact, when too frequent or habitual, can slip into a form of noise that drowns out the quieter voice of their own thoughts. Even pleasant company can become a constant background hum that leaves little room for the kind of solitude in which insights form. They guard against this by choosing carefully whom they let into their time and space. In this way, their social life becomes less about quantity and more about quality, with each interaction serving a purpose that aligns with their values, whether that purpose is mutual learning, creative collaboration, emotional support, or simply the joy of shared silence. They are also aware that not every person is equally capable of entering into the kind of connection they seek. Some are bound by surface-level thinking, resistant to introspection, or preoccupied with distractions that make it difficult to sustain a meaningful exchange. For the thinker, spending time with such company can feel like being pulled away from fertile ground into a place where little can grow. It is not that they demand perfection from others, but that they wish to spend their limited energy where it can be met with reciprocity. A conversation in which ideas are met with curiosity, where vulnerability is met with trust, and where silence is not feared but welcomed, holds far more value than an endless series of shallow encounters. Because of this, they often prefer fewer, deeper connections over a wide network of casual acquaintances. This does not mean they avoid people altogether. Rather, they concentrate on nurturing relationships that encourage authenticity and personal growth for both sides. Such bonds require time and patience to develop, and by saying no to unnecessary visits, they create space for these relationships to flourish without competition from constant uninvited social demands. In doing so, they ensure that when they do open their home and their time to others, the meeting is charged with the full force of their attention, creating something that is worth far more than mere company. Limiting visitors is for some not an act of avoidance, but an act of preservation. The inner life of a thoughtful person is rich with processes that cannot be hurried or constantly interrupted without losing their depth. Within solitude, they are engaged in a form of silent dialogue with themselves, considering experiences, examining emotions, and allowing ideas to unfold at their natural pace. This inner work is as real and demanding as any physical labor, requiring focus, emotional energy, and an undisturbed environment. When they choose not to receive visitors too often, it is because they understand that this process cannot be carried out effectively if the rhythm is constantly broken by social demands, however well-meaning those demands might be. The self, in this sense, is not a static entity, but something that is continuously shaped by these private interactions between conscious thought and unconscious insight. Time alone allows for integration, the weaving together of new experiences with past knowledge, the balancing of emotion with reason, and the gradual alignment of one's actions with one's values. Such integration is delicate work. A single interruption may not seem significant to an outsider, but to the one doing the work, it can mean losing the thread of an important realization or breaking the emotional tone needed for deeper reflection. By limiting visitors, they protect this fragile continuity, ensuring that their progress in understanding themselves is not repeatedly set back. This preservation also has a restorative dimension. The mind and emotions, when constantly engaged with the outside world, become fatigued. Every conversation, every exchange, even with beloved people, carries a cost in attention and energy. The thoughtful person knows that without time to replenish these resources, they cannot give their best self to others or to their own pursuits. Solitude acts as a kind of quiet workshop where the tools of the mind are cleaned, sharpened, and set in order before being brought back into use. Visitors, especially unexpected ones, can scatter these tools, requiring time and effort to restore the workspace to its previous state. Another reason for such preservation is that not all interactions are equal in their impact on the self. Some are nourishing, offering genuine exchange and mutual growth, while others are draining, filled with social obligations, repetitive topics, or emotional undercurrents that leave the host feeling depleted. By keeping their social interactions intentional, they filter out the kinds of visits that would erode their mental or emotional well-being. This is not a judgment on others as people, but a recognition of the fit between two energies. When there is a mismatch, when the visitor's pace, mood, or intentions clash with the host's inner state, the encounter can be more of a burden than a benefit. Preserving the self means protecting against these mismatches as much as possible. There is also an element of respect embedded in this choice. Just as one would not interrupt an artist at work or a scientist in the middle of an experiment, the thoughtful person believes their inner work deserves the same consideration. It is not something to be set aside lightly, for it is the foundation upon which their outer life is built. To compromise this work repeatedly would be to weaken that foundation, making it harder to live authentically and intentionally. By maintaining control over how often and under what circumstances they receive visitors, they affirm that their inner life is worth protecting, and in doing so, they maintain the stability, clarity, and authenticity that define their presence in the world. In the end, the choice to limit visitors is not about shutting people out, but about letting the right moments in, preserving the silence where ideas are born, so that when the door does open, it opens to something meaningful.